I'm used to living by myself, always on the road, making light of other people's woes. I don't need to take much more than just a song or two, and even a smile can lighten up the load. I'm just a song and dance man, going from town to town, playing one-night shows and country rodeos. I'm just a song and dance man, living on a smile. I'll share your laughter anywhere I go. I don't care too much for cities, I ain't seen one I'd call home. The only dust they've got there's just plain dirt. And no one takes you in unless they want you off the streets. I get the feeling some folks fear a smile might hurt. I'm just a song and dance man, going from town to town, playing one-night shows and country rodeos. I'm just a song and dance man, living on a smile. I'll share your laughter anywhere I go. I gave up looking for answers a long, long time ago. Life's just taking chances. Ask any dancer, one foot wrong and it's all undone. I won't ask much of your time, or that you recall my name. Fame is just a momentary curse. But if you recall a song or two that lingers when I'm gone, then I guess a song and dance man could do worse. I'm just a song and dance man, going from town to town, playing one-night shows and country rodeos. I'm just a song and dance man, living on a smile. I'll share your laughter anywhere I go. I'm just a song and dance man, going from town to town, playing one-night shows and country rodeos. I'm just a song and dance man, living on a smile. I'll share your laughter anywhere I go. I'm just a song and dance man, going from town to town, playing one-night shows and country rodeos. I'm just a song and dance man, living on a smile. I'll share your laughter anywhere I go. I'm just a song and dance.
Just such a good song and so familiar to so many of us. The word legend is bandied around a lot, isn't it? Mike McClellan, singer-songwriter, 5 decades this man has been going for, and joins me down on the weekend break. Welcome, Mike.
Thanks, Peter.
thanks for joining me, Matt. I mean, that song, really, I still love it. Can you remember recording it? And who were you recording it with?
Oh, yeah, I can remember it very vividly, actually, because it was the first time I'd been in the studio at EMI,
Yes.
which was where I did subsequently 3 albums with a producer called Northcote and a whole bunch of wonderful players who were later to become very dear friends.
Yeah.
I spent my life thereafter for 25 odd years playing with the keyboard player on that first session, a guy called Tony Ansell, who
Yes.
sadly is not with us any longer. The drummer on that session is a wonderful drummer called Doug Gallagher, and I still see Doug and talk to Doug.
Good.
He lives in Brisbane these days. So, you know, as a consequence, those early sessions were sessions that built musical relationships that have remained with me for the rest of my life, actually.
Absolutely. What happened? You've had a fascinating life. You're a school teacher in the Outback. Your brothers, though, very, very high up in the legal profession. I mean, you must have been the most loved one in the family, surely.
My 2 brothers have, both of whom are retired now, had very, very distinguished careers. My brother Peter led the Royal Commission into Child Abuse for 5 years, after
Yes.
which he retired. My youngest brother Jeff was the chairman of the biggest legal firm in Australia. And in fact, Peter's wife sits on the High Court as a judge on the High Court these days. So the family background is very sort of middle-class professional.
Yes.
My father was an economist. And to some extent, I was a bit of the black sheep. My dad always constantly worried about whether I was actually going to make a living and whether I'd get a real job when I went into music after having taught for a while.
Of course, and 5 decades later, you're done all right, Mike. We congratulate you, absolutely.
Great.
Plenty to talk about today, but you're performing some intimate concerts, the lovely Wesley in Northcote, of course, on Tuesday, the 18th of November, and then at Burke and Will's Winery at Memoir on Saturday the 22nd, Sunday the 23rd. But you're winding down a bit. You're not going to be doing the big tours anymore. I heard a rumour that you were sort of 80-ish. So are you winding it down just a little bit? What will you be doing from now on?
I'm not going to do the long tours anymore. You're right. I turned 80 in August, and in so many ways, Pete, I'm very lucky because I don't suffer from the arthritis that some of my guitar playing friends do.
Yes.
My fingers are still good. I'm still in good voice. I don't think I've changed the keys almost anything I've ever recorded. I still do it in the original key.
Great.
So in that regard, I'm very fortunate, and I feel quite blessed, actually. And I still love performing. I still love getting out and playing concerts. And I'm still writing. I'll do probably one more album next year of mostly just solo guitar and voice stuff. I've got a memoir that's 95,000 words into it with not much more than another, maybe 4 or 5 to go before it's finished. It's in front of some publishers now.
Okay.
And I've got a novel that I put aside a little while ago.
What's the novel about?
A while ago.
Tell us about the novel.
Oh, it grew out of a story that I had been told many, many years ago. And I, for a long time, had doubted the authenticity of it. And I'm still not convinced that it's actually a true story. But I was told it by an old Aboriginal guy one night out on tour. And he mentioned that in a little town somewhere on the Queensland, New South Wales border or on the Queensland Northern Territory border. I'm not sure which now, I can't recall. But it was a sort of apocryphal story in that an Aboriginal guy who lived on the edge of town with his wife and a couple of kids made something of a success of himself. He had a small timber cottage on the edge of town, had a premonition about a fire in the village, and he told several friends as he was quite scared about it. And then about a month or so later, the bakery in the middle of town went up in flames on a Sunday morning, apparently, took out about 5 or 6 shops on one side of the village, and there were some people who lived in a couple of flats above some of those shops who lost their lives during the course of the fire. And then, from what I was told, a bunch of white guys who were never that clearly identified went out, took the Aboriginal man and his wife and kids, tied them up in their house and burnt their house to the ground.
Wow.
And from what I understand, there was an open verdict returned by the coroner. The local town sergeant knew of what had happened and who might have been involved, but never presented evidence of any substance. And basically, whoever it was got away with it.
That's
so
extraordinary.
I've taken that story and I've built on it because, as you mentioned, I started life as a school teacher.
Yes.
And my second appointment as a school teacher was the Aboriginal mission station on the edge of Walgett in northern New South Wales.
No, I know exactly where you mean. And so you've got a bit of inside knowledge that a lot of us do not have at all, Mike.
Yeah, to some extent I do. It was a real cultural shock when I arrived in Walgett because I'd come from Armidale as a young trainee school teacher. I'd gone to school on the North Shore in Sydney. I'd come from a very conservative middle-class background. So to be confronted with what I saw in Walgett when I arrived as a young school teacher was pretty distressing, actually.
Did it change your life?
It changed my life in so much as it gave me an enormous amount of material on which I subsequently reflected and then used to create some songs. It gave me a very unique perspective, which I had not at that stage really encountered, on what was going on in the western areas of New South Wales. Ironically, one of the guys on the Freedom bus that went through west of New South Wales to highlight the treatment of Aborigines in early 65, which was when I was first sent there, was a guy who was subsequently to become the Chief Justice of New South Wales, and at one stage my brother's boss, Jim Spiegelman. And it was distressing because that bus with a bunch of students who were trying to highlight the problems associated with the treatment of Aborigines was run off the road when it was going out of town. And
it's like something from the deep south in the early 60s, Mike.
To some extent it was. It was quite a divided town, and as I said, it disturbed me enormously, but it gave me some material,
Yes.
and then I subsequently, over the years, encountered other Aboriginal people, and there's a lot of wonderful, wonderful Aboriginal musicians, of course, and singers whom I worked with over the years as well. Most notably among them, of course, Jimmy Little.
Oh, yeah.
And I did a television show for the ABC for 4 years in the late 70s, early 80s,
Yes.
and we had quite a number of Aboriginal guests on the show. And country music was very much a staple of Aboriginal music for a long, long time. So to some extent, my delving into country music had some common interests with a lot of the Aboriginal musicians that I encountered.
Mike, I've got so much more to ask you. Would you mind hanging on? We take a break and more talking to you. You're such a lovely person to talk to, and we're learning so much. Mike McClellan, a singer-songwriter, has been around for 5 decades. The black sheep of the family, self-described. You're coming from this middle-class legal family, school teacher in the outback, affiliation with Indigenous, and then giving us all this wonderful music. Mike McClellan, hang in. We'll be back to you next, and you can call anytime, 133 693.
I used to be a young man, and I lived a young man's dreams. I used to think that love was all you need, and the things I took for granted never seemed too hard to take. And there were warning signs I know I didn't heed, and I'd be holding on when hope was gone, cursing at the rain, when every fear I'd ever fought, I thought I'd never tame. And in all that I have learned, there's a lot I still don't know. But through it all, one simple truth remains. Life ain't about waiting for the storm to pass. You gotta learn how to dance in the rain.
It's a lovely way of putting it. It's another one of those, Mike McClellan, who is my guest here on the Weekend Break. What a wonderful songwriter. It's from around about 2014. It's a little bit like if you're given lemons, make lemonade. Dance in the rain. What a great line. You do it so well. Mike, just wondering, I was reading a piece by David Hepworth, who's a writer and presenter and so on. He said, if you were born in the early 50s, you won the musical lottery. Now, you were born a little bit before the early 50s. Who were the artist who got you first when you were growing up?
Oh, gosh. When I was first starting to really listen and get absorbed by music, of course, it was the beginning of the real pop era.
Yes.
So I listened to people like the Everly Brothers. Obviously enough, I also listened to the Beatles and the Stones. I listened to Roy Orbison. I listened to all of those writers that came out of the 60s folk music movement. So the huge influences on my writing were people like Paul Simon, James Taylor, Joni Mitchell, Danny O'Keefe, Jackson Brown, largely because as a writer I was always fascinated by good lyricists.
Yes.
I really wanted songs that made me feel something, that made me think about things, that had a point of view and things to say. And as a kid, I'd always written, Peter. I'd always been one of those kids who loved music, loved making this music with my voice. And when I started to then write songs, I took my cues from those writers who really expressed what it was that was going on in their lives and the things that were important to them. And that's driven most of what I've written right through my life as both a songwriter and a singer, and as an advertising writer when I did that for quite some time in the middle of my career.
Well, Mike, it's an interesting one too, and you mentioned some of those pop artists from the 50s. At what stage did you then discover that they were probably imitating black artists, which a lot of them were?
Oh, they were indeed. And I started to discover that when I heard, people like Jerry Lee Lewis playing things like Great Balls of Fire and a whole lot of shaking going on. And I realised subsequently that he was channeling Little Richard.
Right.
And I then went back and started to explore some of Chuck Berry stuff too, because I remember hearing Memphis, done by a guy called Johnny Rivers initially.
Yes.
And I went in search of the writer of the song and noted that it was by a guy called Chuck Berry, and I knew nothing about him because we didn't hear much of Chuck Berry on the radio in Australia.
No.
And I then began to realise, of course, that a huge amount of what I'd been listening to and a lot of what the Stones were playing.
And the Beatles?
And the Beatles was R&B,
yeah.
Black music out of the deep south of America. So I began to explore all that as well, and I got absolutely fascinated by it.
And all of a sudden you realise all these things were written in the late 40s and some of them in the 30s, and you go back to people like Robert Johnson, and the more you dig, the more you find out. And as a singer-songwriter growing up, that must have been fascinating to you.
It was. And it was enormously influential, not only in my writing, but also in my playing, Pete.
Yeah.
I listened to guitar players like, obviously, Robert Johnson and a wonderful, wonderful player called Blind Blake, who was extraordinary. And they all influenced the way in which I approached the guitar. And when I first started out, I worked really hard at becoming a really good guitar player. And I was doing sort of fingerstyle playing, which was a little rare in the days when I was first beginning to play in the folk clubs in Australia. But nonetheless, what it did, it gave me a slightly unique approach to the way in which I was playing. But it also, in the end, became one of the best ways for me to be able to create arrangements for my own songs.
Yeah. Songwriters, who do you love? I mean, Bob Dylan, obviously, and I think you sound so young and up and about and everything else. You actually are living a line from his song "My Back Pages," aren't you? I was so much older then. I'm younger than that now. Do you agree?
Oh, absolutely. I think when we're very young, of course, we think we know it all.
Sure.
And then as we age, we begin to realise we don't really, and we're still trying to figure it out. And I was very fortunate in that I'd written the lyrics to a song called Letter to America, but I had no melody at the time, and the lyrics came really quickly. I think I'd probably finished them completely within the course of about 45 or 50 minutes. And I had quoted Bob Dylan at the end of the song, and I thought, oh gosh, maybe I should get some permission from Bob. So I then sought his publishers out, and they said, oh, no, you won't get permission to use a Bob Dylan line. And then I remembered that my wonderful friend, the American songwriter Danny O'Keefe, is a very rare writer. He's got a co-write with Bob Dylan. So I sent Danny a note, said, have you got a contact with Bob that's worth my talking to? And by the way, here's some lyrics. I really would like permission if I could use the last two lines of Bob's wonderful song, It's Not Dark Yet. And Danny wrote back and said, mate, here's Jeff Rosen's email address. He's Bob's manager. He's a delightful bloke. But he said, I don't think there's a hope in hell they'll give you permission. It's a matter of business. So I sent a note off to Jeff, and, mate, inside an hour I get a note back from Jeff saying, we love it, go for it.
Really?
And it just blew me away. And then I after some time later, put the words to music and sent them off a copy, of course, and I got a very nice complimentary note back from them too. It was lovely, actually.
That's pretty good. Well, you're based now on the beautiful Sunshine Coast. We will see you again, but not that often because we're not round the corner. And
no,
but you're still writing. I can't wait to read your memoir. Please let us know when that comes out, because that's a history of Australian contemporary music and over the last 50 years through your eyes, no doubt.
Oh, yeah.
That'll be really good to see. But if you want to catch this wonderful singer-songwriter, Mike McClellan, Wesley and Northcote here in town, of course, Tuesday, 18th of November, which is a beautiful venue. Burke and Will's Winery at memoir. Saturday the 22nd and Sunday the 23rd of November. Perfect venues. It'll be very intimate. There'll be storytelling. I'm telling you what to do now, Mike. And all sorts of other wonderful songs over 5 decades of recording, writing and playing. Mike, thanks for everything you've done so far.
Oh, mate, thank you very much, Pete. It's been very enjoyable.
Yeah, good on you, Mike. Mike McClellan, an absolute Australian musical legend. Great talking to you.